The village of Nurell perched like a secret along the coast, its cottages carved from salt white stone, its wind always smelling of sea and stories. The people there did not speak much of magic, but they all remembered Grandmother Mela. Mela, the old woman with the driftwood cane and sea glass beads, who whispered to barnacles and braided the tide into her hair. And Coralie was her granddaughter. Coralie had always felt the sea was part of her. She spoke softly, moved like waves, and collected pieces the ocean left behind, glass pebbles, kelp rings, and strange seashells that hummed when pressed to her ear. Her grandmother used to say, "The sea keeps secrets better than the stars, but it always leaves breadcrumbs for those who listen." But then, one dawn, Grandmother Mela vanished. No footprints on the sand. No boat taken. Only her cane planted upright in the tide, and beside it, a single shell. It was unlike any Coralie had ever seen. Translucent, spiral-shaped, glowing faintly with light that flickered like distant starlight. When she held it close, she could hear something, a rhythm. A breath, a whisper, greater than come down, where the glass flowers grow. That night, Coralie sat alone on the shore, staring out at the sea that had taken the only person who ever truly understood her. The villagers said, she was old. The sea claimed her, as it does all who live too long beside it. But Coralie didn't believe that. Mela had told her once, "When I go, I won't be gone. I'll be deeper, where the garden sleeps." So Coralie pressed the shell to her ear again. This time, the voice inside was clearer. Greater than find the door beneath the reef. Where the broken corals breathe. The garden fades, the roots grow dim. It waits for you, child of the sea. Coralie's heart pounded. A storm gathered behind her, and lightning danced over the horizon, but she was already moving. Already barefoot. Already stepping into the tide, holding the glowing shell close to her chest. She did not know where she was going. Only that the sea had opened a path. And her grandmother had left her the key. The tide rose higher as Coralie waded into the dark sea. The glowing shell in her hand pulsed with warmth, guiding her steps. Waves lapped at her knees, then her waist, yet the cold never reached her. It felt as though the sea was protecting her, parting just enough to allow her passage. Then suddenly, crack, her foot struck something hard beneath the surface. She stumbled and fell, plunging beneath the waves. The world turned blue and silent. And then, something tugged gently at her sleeve. She blinked. There, walking sideways along the ocean floor, was a crab, but not like any she'd ever seen. His shell shimmered golden, etched with swirling patterns that glowed like tiny runes. His eyes sparkled like pearls, and when he waved his claw, it wasn't just a gesture. It was an invitation. The strange thing was, Coralie could breathe. Not just breathe. She felt lighter, as though the water had become air, and the ocean floor was solid ground. The shell in her hand pulsed again, and the crab began to scuttle forward, leading her deeper through twisting coral paths and tunnels carved from seashells. "Wait," she called. "Where are we going?" The crab paused, turned his eye stalks back, and, to her astonishment, spoke. "Where you're needed, child. Where the garden fades. You can talk. I am Sir Nautilus Crabbington III, he said with a bow. At your service. Guide, guardian, and former ballroom dancer." Coralie blinked. Ballroom dancer. Long story. Come along. He led her through a hollow reef shaped like a spiraling conch. The walls glowed with bioluminescent jellyfish, and schools of silverfish swam through the arches like falling stars. The deeper they went, the dimmer the world became, until the water turned a strange shade of green-blue, and the coral around them began to wither. Coralie slowed. "What happened here?" "The garden," Sir Crabbington said, his tone now somber. "The glass garden. It's dying, cracked from the inside out. Something has poisoned its roots. And your grandmother, Nurell, she went down to stop it." Coralie clutched the shell tighter. "She's alive, perhaps, but not for long. If the garden fails, she'll fade with it. Then take me there. Now." Sir Crabbington paused at a shimmering doorway made from overlapping seashells. "I must warn you," he said quietly. "Once you pass through this door, the sea will remember you. It will show you its truths, even the ones you might wish to forget." Coralie stepped forward. Then let it. I've lived too long not knowing. The doorway opened with a swirl of light and sound, and the path to the glass garden began. The moment Coralie passed through the shell-carved archway, the water shimmered around her like a curtain being lifted. And then, she saw it. The glass garden. It stretched farther than the eye could see, rows upon rows of crystal blooms, shaped like lilies, anemones, roses, and sea stars, each one carved from glimmering, delicate glass. The petals shifted in color as they moved gently with the current, glowing softly like sleeping lanterns. It was the most breathtaking thing Coralie had ever seen. But it was broken. Whole patches of the garden were cracked, their petals shattered across the sandy floor like stardust. Some flowers were completely dark, their stems drooping, drained of all color and light. Thin black tendrils, like ink from a wounded squid, crept through the soil beneath them, curling around roots, choking them. Coralie knelt beside a shattered bloom. Her fingers brushed one of the glass petals, it was still warm. "What happened?" she whispered. Sir Crabbington scuttled up beside her, his golden shell dimmer than before. "This garden is the keeper of ocean memory. Every joy, sorrow, song, and silence ever whispered to the sea takes root here. But something has begun to unravel it. A poison, not a poison of flesh, but of feeling. Grief, forgetting, fear." Coralie stood slowly. "That's why grandmother came. She knew the garden was fading." Sir Crabbington nodded. "She came to tend to it. She was once its keeper, long ago. She thought the garden would outlive her. But something deeper took root, something ancient, something angry." Coralie looked around. The petals still glowed faintly in the unbroken parts, memories, just like her grandmother said. She stepped into the heart of the garden. The sea shifted. Suddenly, the glass flowers sang. Not in words, but in feeling, music of 1,000 voices humming through the water. Coralie saw flashes of other lives, flickering in the petals, mermaids dancing beneath storms, fishermen's lullabies, whales singing to their calves, a girl watching the stars with her grandmother by the shore. Coralie gasped. "I can feel them, all of them." Then came the silence. She turned, and found herself face to face with a blackened patch of garden. A rose, once brilliant blue, now hung limp and lifeless. The memory inside it was hers. The night her mother died. The funeral. The silence that followed. The years of wondering why. The loneliness that settled in. The ink rot curled around the rose, feeding on it. Coralie fell to her knees. "This is me," she whispered. "My pain." Sir Crabbington gently tapped her arm. "The garden reflects all. Not just joy, but sorrow. That's why it's breaking. Too many hearts have stopped tending their memories. Too many have tried to forget." Coralie stood, tears drifting upward like silver threads. "Then I won't forget. Not ever again." She reached for the withered rosé. The moment her fingers touched it, the rot hissed and drew back. Light poured from her palm into the flower. It trembled, and bloomed. Not fully, but enough. And across the garden, other petals began to stir. The garden had felt her heart. And it remembered. After Coralie restored the rose, the garden began to stir, just slightly, like a dreamer turning in sleep. Petals glowed. Faint music returned. The path ahead shimmered with soft green light. Sir Crabbington scuttled beside her. "You've awakened one bloom, but the rot lies deeper still. We must reach the heart reef." "What's there?" Coralie asked. "The source. Of the poison. Of the silence. And," he hesitated, "the one who watches it all. The sea prince without a name." They moved deeper into the garden. The coral paths narrowed, winding into spiral tunnels where light bent strangely. At the center, a great arch formed from sunken driftwood and broken shells stood guard. Beyond it was a dark chamber. No flowers, no song, no movement. Only silence. And him. He sat on a throne made of barnacle-encrusted stone, surrounded by wilted glass vines. His eyes were closed, his skin pale as moonlight. He looked no older than Coralie, yet there was something ancient about him, as if time itself had passed through his veins. When he opened his eyes, they glowed a deep silver blue. "You are not meant to be here," he said, his voice like a ripple through still water. Coralie stepped forward. "I'm looking for my grandmother. And for the truth." There is no truth in memory, he replied. Only wait. She shook her head. That's not true. Memories are all we have when everything else fades. His expression didn't change. I once thought that too. I tried to remember everything. Every tear, every face, every word. But it became too much. So I buried my name. And now, the garden sleeps. Sir Crabbington whispered, he was once the heartkeeper. Until he locked his own name away. Without it, he cannot remember who he is, or what he was meant to protect. Coralie looked at the boy. Your name matters. It's part of you. He laughed softly, a sad sound. And what good has it done? Names carry grief, burdens. The more you remember, the heavier you become. Then I'll carry some of it with you, Coralie said. That silenced the chamber. The prince stood slowly. You would share my sorrow. I already have. I know what it's like to lose someone and want to forget, because remembering hurts. But forgetting leaves us empty. She held out the glowing glass shell. Touch it. The prince hesitated, then placed his hand beside hers on the shell. It pulsed with light, bright, blinding. And then, his name returned. A single word echoed through the garden like a bell. Greater than, Kaelin. The rot hissed. Vines writhed. The glass floor trembled. The prince gasped, hand to his chest. I remember, I was the one who sang the garden awake. I was the voice beneath the tide. He looked at Coralie, tears welling. You brought me back. She smiled gently. Then helped me bring the garden back too. Together, they stepped into the silence, and prepared to wake the sea. The name Kaelin echoed like a song remembered, and with it, the glass garden shivered to life, just a little more. Cracks in the petals healed. Colors deepened. Light danced once again through the coral arches. But deeper still, beyond the reach of color or song, something old and wounded stirred. Sir Crabbington led them past the throne chamber into a cavern of crushed shells and pale silt. The water here was still, heavy, and strangely warm. The further they walked, the more Coralie noticed something beneath her bare feet, veins. Long, twisting strands like roots, glowing faintly through the sand. This is it, Kaelin whispered. The heart roots. They're connected to every flower in the garden, to every memory the sea has kept. Coralie knelt down. Her fingers brushed the sand, and the moment she touched it, visions flooded her mind. A mother's lullaby sung to the stars. A storm tearing a boat apart. A child's laughter echoing in tide pools. A funeral at sea. A kiss beneath the waves. A broken promise. A silent goodbye. Joy, grief, love, loss, memory. The roots pulsed with all of it. Sir Crabbington's voice shook. The rot grows here, deepest of all. They followed the thickest vein until it disappeared into a twisting hole in the seabed, from which inky tendrils writhed like living shadow. Coralie's stomach twisted. It's alive. Kaelin nodded grimly. It's pain. Not a creature, not exactly. But it feeds on what we bury. All the sorrow the sea has taken but not healed. A gurgling, wet howl echoed from the hole. A wind stirred the water, and glass petals tumbled down from the garden above like falling snow. We have to go down there, Coralie said. No, Sir Crabbington said quickly, claws clicking. That is the tangle deep, child. Once something is lost there, it rarely returns. I'm not something, Coralie said. I'm someone, and I have to try. Kaelin stepped beside her. Then I'm coming too. Sir Crabbington puffed out his shell with a reluctant sigh. And me, of course. I knew I should have taken that retirement cruise. Hand in hand, Coralie and Kaelin descended into the wound beneath the sand, guided only by the pulse of the heartroots and the promise of a garden worth saving. The descent into the tangle deep was like sinking into forgotten dreams. As Coralie, Kaelin, and Sir Crabbington entered the swirling maw beneath the garden, the water thickened, turning almost like mist, like memories refusing to be clear. All light vanished. All color faded. The only guide was the faint glow from Coralie's glass shell and the trembling shimmer of the heartroots that lined the walls like veins. It was quiet at first. Too quiet. Then came the whispers. Disjointed. Familiar. Frightening. Greater than, you weren't enough. Why didn't you save her? He left because of you. You don't belong down here. Coralie froze, breath catching. She wasn't sure if the voices were hers, or someone else's. Kaylin reached for her hand. It's the tangle. It feeds on what you fear. Don't listen. But Coralie's knees trembled. The voices sounded too real. Too raw. I hear my mother, she whispered. The day she went out to sea and didn't come back. I hear my sister, Kaylin said quietly. The one I forgot. The one I let fade with my name. Sir Crabbington's shell clinked as he stepped beside them. I hear an old dance partner yelling about my left claw stepping off beat. He shuddered. Dark stuff. The passage opened into a cavern of glass tiers, stalactites shaped like falling drops, suspended mid-fall. In each one, a memory trembled. Coralie stepped carefully between them. Then she saw it, floating in the center of the chamber like a tethered storm, a mass of writhing black tendrils, wrapped around something glowing faintly. The rot. It was beautiful and terrible, like a wounded spirit guarding its pain. At its center, Coralie could just barely see a flickering light, the same glow as her grandmother's shell. She's here, Coralie gasped. Her spirit, her memory, she gave herself to this place to keep it from collapsing. The rot lashed outward, shrieking, not with sound, but with grief. The water shook. Memories cracked. The tears in the cavern shattered one by one, echoing like broken bells. Kaylin drew a shimmering blade of coral from his sleeve. We have to cut it out. No, Coralie said, stepping forward. You don't heal grief by fighting it. You heal it by facing it. She let go of Kaylin's hand and stepped straight into the rot. The darkness surged, wrapped around her, pierced her mind with every sorrow she'd buried. Her mother's empty chair, her father's silence, the long hours of loneliness. But she clutched the shell. And she remembered. She remembered laughter on the shore. Her grandmother's voice telling her stories. The first time she found sea glass. The way it felt to be loved. I accept the pain, Coralie whispered into the dark. But I will not let it be all I carry. The rot screamed, but it recoiled. Light burst from the shell, warm, golden, and clear. It didn't burn the rot. It didn't destroy it. It calmed it. The tendrils loosened. The center uncoiled. And there, wrapped in roots of memory, was Grandmother Mela's spirit, eyes closed, peaceful. Her voice drifted into Coralie's heart like a lullaby. Greater than, you found me, child of the sea, and you brought the light with you. Coralie wept. Not from sorrow, but from release. The silence after the rot recoiled was deeper than any before. It was not the silence of emptiness, but the stillness before rebirth. Coralie floated in the heart of the tangle deep, cradling the glowing spirit of her grandmother. Kaylin stood behind her, his silver eyes wide with awe. Sir Crabbington sat quietly on a broken piece of coral, his usual witty remarks lost in reverence. The tendrils of grief had loosened their grip, not gone, but softened. As though they, too, had longed for someone to understand them. Then, softly, like a ripple in moonlit water, a sound began. Not a voice. Not at first. A hum. Low, tender, ancient. It was Morella's voice, no longer a whisper, but a melody. Greater than, O tide that turns and stars that shine. Remember love is root and vine. For sorrow bends and joy will flow. Where broken things still learn to grow. The walls of the cavern shimmered. The glass tears trembled, and instead of shattering, they sang. One by one, the teardrops resonated with the melody, echoing Morella's voice until the entire tangle deep rang with a symphony of remembrance. Kaylin stepped forward, his coral blade fading into light. He placed a hand on Coralie's shoulder, his voice now joining the song. Greater than, though names are lost and time may flee, the heart remembers endlessly. Sir Crabbington raised a claw. Well, I don't sing often, but, he cleared his throat. La, Coralie smiled, even through tears, and let herself sing. Greater than, the sea forgets, the sea forgives. But memory within it lives. As their voices wove together, the roots beneath the sand pulsed with color. The rot began to retreat, folding in on itself like a shadow shrinking from sunrise. It did not vanish, it transformed, becoming part of the rhythm again. The garden above responded, petals opened, light bloomed, and somewhere high above, the tide turned. The garden of glass was healing. Morella's spirit drifted from Coralie's arms, her form glowing like the first sunrise. Her eyes met her granddaughter's, soft and full of pride. Greater than, you did not run from sorrow. You listened. And because of that, the sea sings again. She touched Coralie's heart, and then, she was gone. Not lost, but woven into the song. And the garden would never forget her. The garden was awake. As Coralie and Kaelin rose from the depths of the tangle deep, hand in hand with Sir Crabbington scuttling close behind, the sea around them shimmered with new light. It wasn't just sunlight from above, it was coming from within the ocean itself. The heartroots, once faint and fading, now glowed with vibrant colors that pulsed gently like a heartbeat. The black tendrils that had once choked the garden had been drawn into the rhythm of the roots, woven in, not erased, but understood. Because even sorrow had its place in growth. As they ascended through the coral paths, something began to happen. The glass garden bloomed, not just the flowers that had once lived, but new ones. Petals shaped like spirals, stars, feathers, and waves burst from the seabed, each a glowing memory newly awakened. They opened one by one in a silent explosion of light, color, and feeling. Each bloom sang its own note. A boy's laugh, a lullaby from a forgotten island, a mother's prayer to the sea, a father's quiet promise, a girl's bravery in the dark. Coralie floated in the middle of it all, her hair swirling like sea grass, her arms open. The shell in her hand shimmered, then quietly dissolved, its purpose fulfilled. Kaelin turned to her. You've changed the sea. She shook her head. No, I just listened to it. Sir Crabbington wiped an imaginary tear from his beady eyes. I've never been so emotionally compromised underwater in all my years. Suddenly, a ripple passed through the water, gentle but powerful. The flowers bent slightly as if in greeting. Then, one by one, they released tiny glowing seeds, glass orbs no bigger than raindrops, that drifted upward like jellyfish, rising toward the surface, toward the world above. What are they? Coralie asked, watching them float past. Memories, Kaelin said softly. Being returned. To whom? To everyone who forgot. To the world that stopped listening. A single bloom unfurled beneath Coralie's feet, shaped like a spiral shell, just like the one her grandmother left her. Inside, she saw her own memory reflected, a younger version of herself, barefoot on the sand, holding Nurella's hand. She smiled, and for the first time since her grandmother disappeared, she felt whole. The sea was not silent anymore. It was singing again. The sea shimmered as the last of the glass memory seeds floated upward, weaving through the water like fireflies ascending into the sky. Coralie watched them go, her heart full, not heavy, not broken, but full. The garden was blooming again, its song gentle and deep. She could still hear it as a hum in her chest, like a quiet heartbeat. Kaelin swam beside her, the silver in his eyes glowing brighter now, no longer clouded by sorrow. You'll return, won't you? He asked softly. Coralie nodded. Of course. But I think the surface is waiting for me. Sir Crabbington gave a dramatic sniffle. You'll miss me most of all, I know. She grinned. You've earned your title, Sir Crabbington the Brave. They rose together, leaving behind the vibrant glass garden, now guarded by its reborn prince. As they ascended, the ocean seemed to part in welcome, currents shifting to guide her, fish swimming alongside like an escort of stars. When Coralie broke the surface, the sun was just beginning to rise. And the shore of Nurell lay ahead. She swam with strong strokes, feeling the air on her face again, the light in her eyes, and the tide cradling her return. When she stepped onto the sand, barefoot and glowing with salt and light, the villagers gasped. A few stumbled back, others whispered her name, but one voice called out clearly. Coralie. She turned. It was her father. He hadn't spoken to her much since Mela vanished, closed off by grief, by regret. But now, his eyes were wide with tears, staring at the daughter he thought he'd lost to the same sea that had taken his mother. You came back, he breathed. She ran to him, and he didn't hesitate. He wrapped her in his arms, tight and trembling. I remember now, he whispered. The stories, the songs, your grandmother's voice. It came to me like a dream. Coralie smiled, burying her face in his shoulder. It wasn't a dream. The sea returned it to you. Others gathered, murmuring in awe. Several held glowing glass seeds in their hands, which had washed ashore with the tide. One woman clutched a pearl-shaped bloom and wept. "My brother," she said. "I dreamed of him last night. I remember his laugh again." The village began to stir, not with fear of the sea, but wonder. Coralie stepped forward, wet hair dripping, eyes shining. "The garden is alive again," she said. "And it remembers us." Behind her, the tide whispered. "Greater than not an ending, but a beginning." Seasons passed in the village of Nurell, but something had changed, and not just in the rhythm of the waves. The villagers no longer feared the sea. They listened to it. The old stories returned, songs sung while mending nets, tales told beneath moonlight, children tracing the shapes of imagined sea creatures in the sand. The beach once quiet with morning now echoed with laughter, wonder, and remembrance. And in the middle of it all stood Coralie. She had become something more than just a girl who once disappeared into the sea. She was the keeper of glass and tide. Each morning, she walked the shoreline, collecting the memory seeds that still washed in from the deep. Some she planted in the sand. Others she returned to the sea. Every few weeks, she dove beneath the waves, back to the glass garden. Back to Kaelin, who was now no longer a forgotten prince, but a wise guardian of the blooming deep. Sometimes they walked together through the crystal groves. Sometimes they sang. And sometimes, they simply sat in silence, knowing that memory didn't always need words. Coralie's father had changed, too. He repaired boats again, told tales again, laughed again. One day, he carved a small stone shrine near the tide pools, marked with glass petals and a driftwood plaque. Greater than for Morella, who taught us that the sea keeps not what it takes, but what it's given with love. And on the equinox of each season, the village gathered near the shore. They lit lanterns. They sang old songs. They placed memory seeds into the tide and whispered names. Coralie would stand among them, hair kissed by salt wind, a glass rose tucked behind one ear. She was no longer just a granddaughter. She was a bridge, between sea and shore, memory and future, sorrow and joy. She had gone to the deepest place and come back not broken, but blooming. And the sea, it sang with her now. Greater than in tide and bloom, in salt and flame. She mended wounds without a name. With heart unbroken, wide and wide. The keeper of glass and tide. Wave moral lesson. True healing doesn't come from forgetting, it comes from remembering with love. Our memories, even the painful ones, shape who we are. When we embrace both the sorrow and the joy, we create space for growth, connection, and transformation. Even in our darkest depths, beauty can bloom again. For more motivation stories, please like, share and subscribe this channel. Thanks and God bless.